Hey guys, this is AJ22 coming at you finally with another Transformers review, and today we are taking a look at the Optimus Maximus wave, that being the wave that repaints a whole bunch of the Stunticons into new versions of some of the classic Transformers characters. Here we have Prowl, Ironhide, Sunstreaker, and Mirage, and of course these are Combiner Wars figures, so they can combine with Combiner Wars Optimus Prime to form Optimus Maximus. I am using the original retail version of Combiner Wars Optimus Prime. There is a new one, a white repaint with a new head that has some retooling in its legs to make the engineering in its legs a little bit better, but for the most part, I don't like the way that figure looks, so I did not pick it up and I don't plan to. Instead, I will be making Optimus Maximus using these 5 components, but since we've already taken a look at this guy, we are not really going to be using him much in this review. He's just here so you can see him next to the other guys. So let's go ahead and set him aside and take a look at these guys individually. And now what this review is going to focus on is not transformations. We've already seen those in the reviews of the Stunticons. What it's going to focus on is the appearance of these figures in vehicle and robot modes and their comparison to their Stunticon counterparts, which I'm not even going to bring on screen until the final comparison between Optimus Maximus and Menasor. I'm just going to include some footage up in the corner of the screen of those figures from my previous reviews, because I do want to get this one over quickly. This is not a set that I want to focus a lot of time on because we have effectively already seen these figures before. There is another member of this group, of course, which is Rodimus, whose weapon is still stuck up there. And it provided that it gets done before this video gets done being edited, this guy will be featured in a mini review before the main review, so I'm not going to talk about him in this review either. As for these guys, though, I do want to start with Mirage and Ironhide, because these are figures that I already own as Classics figures. And while I'm not going to be comparing them to their Classics versions here today, I do want to talk about them a little bit, so I'm going to kind of do them a little bit separately first. So let's start with Ironhide here. Ironhide is a pickup truck taking cues from the Michael Bay movies, which I will defend the designs of the Michael Bay movie characters to my last breath, because I really do feel like they revitalize the look and design and engineering of Transformers. And so I don't mind that Ironhide here is a pickup truck rather than an SUV like he has been previously. All the design cues are here. He is bright red with yellow striping, and he even has kind of the metallic blue windows and windshields, harkening back to his Classics version design. Big topographed Autobot symbol there on his hood, and some really cool gunmetal gray, metallic gunmetal gray paint on his front end and on his rear bumper. But he is still basically a repaint, a straight repaint of a Stunticon in this mode. And as I've been featuring in the video, of course, up above. So I can understand why some people wouldn't like this guy. Between the changes to Ironhide's basic vehicle mode design and the fact that he is effectively a straight repaint, I can understand why people wouldn't like this. I personally love it. I think it's a great looking vehicle. On to Mirage. He is, of course, a Formula Racer, and he is again a repaint of a Stunticon from the Menasor set. Silver rims. Nice white and blue, some topographed details there, some more topographed details here. No paint on the back end, but overall he's got a good look to him. Open cockpit, obviously. Very nice looking figure. Not quite what you would expect Mirage to look like, but still not that far off. And as someone who owns Classic Mirage and is still one of like the 5% of collectors who doesn't really like the design of this figure, I can tell you, while this one is not perfect by any means, I actually kind of prefer it to Classics Mirage, and there will definitely be a video directly comparing these two figures so that I can talk about why I don't really like that one and why I prefer this one still, and we'll see this more in robot mode. This guy is not quite Mirage either, though there is a repro label set that adds more racing details to him and does help with the look. There really isn't much you can do to fix that overall. And I can definitely understand why people wouldn't want this figure in their collection if they are a huge fan of Classics Mirage. As for the other two, I never owned Classics equivalents of these guys, so I am incredibly excited to have Prowl here, who is, of course, a police car. Autobot symbol, light bar. Just like Ironhide, he does have the metallic blue windows and windshield, and even a little metallic blue back window. No paint in the back, but we can see a good amount of black here in the front, and silver windshields. Very futuristic looking police car design, and I really like it. The only issue I really have with this is the black that comes up here, because this is all unpainted black plastic. I do wish the white could have been carried on through here. I have not checked to see if there is a repro label set that fixes that yet, but if there is, I will probably pick it up, and if I do, I will do a mini review of it, of course. But I'm very psyched to have a version of Prowl. I really enjoyed Prowl as a character, and I was always kind of bummed. I think it was Universe Prowl that was released. I was really bummed that I was never able to pick that figure up. I also kind of wish he had silver rims, but hey, what are you going to do? If I really reach a point where it bothers me, I will paint them myself. And then finally, for vehicle modes, we have Sunstreaker, which is another figure that has been released as a classic that I never got my hands on. And he's the only one whose car I don't really buy as the character. The front end is just too different from the way I would expect Sunstreaker to look. It doesn't look bad, don't get me wrong, but I think Sunstreaker was a Lamborghini, and this guy just doesn't quite sell that as well as I think he could. Though, I do like that he has integration of his foot weapon in vehicle mode made to look like the engine block that would sit on top of the figure in its G1 design. And it connects fairly easily. You can see here 2 notches up top here that fit into these 2 slots. Let's see if I can do this from behind the camera. There we go, like so. And then this tab slots in like so. And there we go. And this is the only figure that has such integrated use of the foot weapon. So it's the only one that I really display with the foot weapon attached in vehicle mode. Not that I really display these guys in vehicle mode very often, because of course Optimus Maximus is the way you want to go. But let's go ahead and get these guys into their robot modes now through the magic of jump cuts. And here we have them all together in their robot modes, and once again I will start looking at details with the 2 figures that I do own as classics figures as well. So let's first once again start with Ironhide, and this is a mode where we're going to see details that are more specific to these particular characters, as each one of these guys does have a different head sculpt compared to their Stunticon counterparts. So looking at Ironhide here, we can see he has a very Ironhide-esque head sculpt. It's a little small-ish, but it's not bad. He has windshields painted into his chest to kind of give the same look of an Ironhide body configuration. But mostly, this guy is thin and he is young-looking compared to Classics Ironhide, and I really like this a lot better. I don't dislike Classics Ironhide. I think it did a lot of really clever things with its engineering. But in the end, it is kind of a big cluster. It's very difficult to transform. It took some extensive modding just to get it to transform properly, which if you have the American version of Classics Ironhide, there's a good chance you know exactly what I'm talking about. And he kind of had the look of an overweight, middle-aged guy who was past his prime. And while I don't have an issue with overweight Transformers, I've always seen Ironhide as the vital warrior type, and Classics Ironhide just doesn't fit that for me, and this guy really does. You can see the coloration does a really good job of carrying through here. We get a lot more of that gunmetal gray now in his legs. He has this big black area in his chest that I think just really helps the red to stand out a lot more of the gunmetal gray there in his chest. And he does have a foot weapon, of course, and he has an entirely unpainted axe. I wish his axe had some paint on it, because as it is, I just don't really like it. Just give it some silver paint like the foot weapon, and I would be happy. And chances are I will paint it myself, but I am trying to review these guys completely unaltered for this review. So if I ever do paint it, I will show that off. later on, but this is him entirely unmodded. And even entirely unmodded, I do enjoy the figure enough. Have I taken Classics Ironhide off the shelf and replaced him with this guy? No, but I do think he is a great alternative if you don't have a Classics version of Ironhide. I think this is a great alternative to pick up. Mirage, not quite so much. While I think his vehicle mode works perfectly fine for Mirage, his robot mode isn't quite as good because if he were true to his model, this bit would somehow end up on his chest, and that doesn't happen here. And while it's not that bad, while he has a decent Mirage head sculpt and his paint scheme is very Mirage-esque, the robot mode doesn't fit the character as much as the vehicle mode does, unfortunately. And once again, I can really see why people would prefer to seek out the original Classics version of the character over this one. He does, of course, have this little short sword, which was the same one that, was it Drift, I think, had it in the Stunticon set. And he does have his foot weapon, which is painted silver. All of these foot weapons are painted silver so that they match each other. And I'm not really going to talk anymore about this guy because he is still effectively just a straight-up repaint. And as his color scheme doesn't really change going from robot mode to vehicle mode and vice versa, there isn't really a lot more detail to look at here, unfortunately. We'll move right on to Prowl, who is another cop with a shotgun. And while it is completely unpainted white, I think it looks really dynamic with his entirely white and black color scheme. And of course, it is a freaking hand shotgun. And I absolutely love it. I love this weapon. I think it looks great on this guy who has a really dynamic, really angular, really intimidating looking design. And overall, just a great looking figure. With the white on black and the little bits of light gray, everything just pops just as much as you want it to. He looks like a cop. He's got a really nice Prowl head sculpt. Overall, a great figure, and I'm perfectly content with having this in place of Universe Prowl on my shelf. And then, unfortunately, we move on to Sunstreaker, who, once again, doesn't impress me. He has a really nice Sunstreaker head sculpt, and his paint scheme definitely screams Sunstreaker. He's even got a nifty weapon, which is a combination gun and sword, so that he can do the ranged or the melee thing with it. But for the most part, this guy just doesn't strike me as Sunstreaker, and it's probably because, once again, his entire front end of his car mode ends up on his back. And I can't remember if it was Sunstreaker or Sideswipe who had the car mode front end on their chest, or if it was both of them or what. I'm pretty sure it was only one or the other of them, but I always picture him with the car mode front end on his chest. I picture a lot of Autobots looking that way. And so when I see this figure here in this configuration, it doesn't scream Sunstreaker to me as much as it could. Now, don't get me wrong, I am happy to have a version of Sunstreaker now that is somewhat similar to his G1 design in my collection. I'm very excited about that. It isn't my favorite figure of the set. Do I think you should pick it up, though? Yes, absolutely. I do think you should pick up every figure in this set. This is a good set, and as we will see in just a moment, Optimus Maximus does look pretty freaking cool. So without further ado, let's get him out here through the magic of jump cuts. And here we have our first robot mode configuration for the full Optimus Maximus team with Mirage and Ironhide as arms and Sunstreaker and Prowl as legs. And I know a lot of people prefer a combination more similar to this one, but I just don't like the way it looks. I feel like it makes Optimus way too high in the shoulders, but without broad enough shoulders, and his arms are just way too thin. Besides, for whatever reason, my version of Optimus Maximus in this configuration is just really back heavy. I don't know exactly what the problem is, because, see, there it goes again, because the distribution weight seems to be about the same as it is in the other configuration, but for whatever reason, it just doesn't want to stay up. Not only that, but my Ironhide likes to come apart at what are the robot mode legs, so posing that arm is really difficult. So I am going to go ahead and jump straight from this to my preferred configuration. This is the configuration I prefer, with Ironhide and Mirage acting as legs, because if you look down here, with Mirage's front end pointing up like this, which unfortunately does not lock in, but it sits well enough, the joint is tight enough, you have that symmetry there in the knees, You have the thicker lower arms, which gives him more of a muscular build, and you have asymmetry in the shoulders as well with the front ends of Prowl and Sunstreaker. And of course, guns on his shoulders because shoulder cannons are awesome. And what this means now is he's able to use ranged weapons in his arms without having to mix and match which limb is holding which appropriate weapon. You have Sunstreaker's weapon here and Prowl's weapon here. It also means you can do a fun thing where you actually swap the limbs up to change from ranged mode to melee mode. If he's in ranged mode, you use Sunstreaker and Prowl. If he's in melee mode, you use Mirage and Ironhide, since their weapons are melee weapons. And I think that's a pretty cool idea. In fact, I may start changing up his configuration periodically on my shelf in order to convey something like that. But of course, we have one more comparison to get out of the way, so let's go ahead and move on to that through the magic of jump cuts. And finally, we have our last comparison of all. We have Menasor in my preferred configuration for him next to Optimus in my preferred configuration for him. And you can see there's quite a bit of differentiation between these two characters. I've effectively reversed the feet and the arms to make them look as different as possible, and I don't use Rodimus in Optimus's chest, giving him a really distinct look in the torso. And of course, Rodimus can go into Optimus's chest. I'll go ahead and show that off. There you go. He looks okay there, don't get me wrong. It's not terrible. And you can remove his weapon so that you still get kind of the windshield look, because he has the front and back windows that kind of situate in the same location. But to be perfectly honest, I just don't like the figure in this configuration. I don't think it works quite as well. So let's go ahead and get rid of that. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this review, guys. I certainly hope you enjoyed it, because I enjoyed making it. Once again, this review will be up both on my AJ Universe channel and my AJ22 Reviews channel. This is the last toy review that will be on my AJ Universe channel. So if you do enjoy my toy reviews, I once again implore you to go and subscribe to my AJ22 Reviews channel. There will be a link to it in the description down below if you are watching on my AJ Universe channel. But either way, guys, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.